The raid on the Kazuraibu was a disaster. The operational team suffered near total losses, and while Operative Sharif escaped with the data necessary to pursue the signal, we were unable to stop our hidden adversary from doing the same. Light forces will no longer suffice for these engagements. A general in the pre-Panoceanian territories once said that the role of infantry was not to expend itself upon heroic physical effort, not to wither away under merciless gunfire, nor impale itself on hostile bayonets. To the contrary, it is to advance under the maximum possible protection of the maximum possible array of mechanical resources in the form of armor, artillery, and aerial superiority. It is to be relieved, as far as possible, of the obligation to fight its way forward. This is now war, and we and our allies must fight it as such. Salah al-Din has been briefed and will lead the next operation personally. The time for the subtle knife has ended. Let us unsheath the sword of Haqqislam. Yes, it's time for the Monday Signal Mission 2, Ghost in the Feed. This video will go live shortly after a full mission briefing for that mission, so go and check that out if you haven't already, where we break down mission scoring, objective, and how it plays. And in this video, we'll be playing Haqqislam versus the perfidious interlopers of the Ariadnan Kosmoflotilla. So for those of you who followed the previous video, you'll know that previously on the Monday Signal, we played the Haqqislam Baram directly into the teeth of a fully armed and operational Panoceanian battle station, including a Swiss Guard missile launcher and red-eye. And not to put too fine a point on it, although we managed to hold the game to a draw, we definitely got our teeth kicked in a little bit. And in this case, as tends to happen, following games where I've had a sharp learning experience, I went back to the drawing board and cooked a little. I knew for this game I wanted to continue the broad Haqqislam theme, but that it was time to put away Haqqislam Baram and pull out the bigger guns, and that's what this list is. On top of that, what I'm specifically trying to do with this list is incorporate some lessons learned from a recent event. It was just a small local event, but it was one where I played double flyer Haqqislam, and I use it as a bit of an opportunity to really get to grips with both the strengths and the weaknesses of that list. And having now played Double Flyer, that's Zabek and Haytham with Saladin, you can imagine the list, it's actually fairly popular. I've come to the conclusion that Double Flyers in particular isn't 100% for me. It's a good list, but I wouldn't want to play it all the time, kind of for similar reasons to why I wouldn't want to play Double Boktar all the time, although Double Flyer is absolutely better. If you recall the previous Monday Signal video, one of the things I noted about playing especially Double Boktar is that you really have to force them to do work, and because you have to force them to do work, you have to force a Red Fury to do work. And the same kind of thing tends to happen when you're running two flyers. You can't just bench the Haytham in particular, you have to use it as a main gun, not just as a predator piece. And as wonderful a flyer as it is, it's got a Red Fury. And so this Haqqislam list is an attempt to have as many bases covered as possible, but also contingencies and good specialist coverage, and honestly just the ability to pursue as many lines of play as possible. This kind of plays into the Monday Signal Mission 2's diverse specialties rule, but ultimately what we're doing here is just splashing in lots of small and in some cases large capabilities so that we never don't have a line, so that we're never locked into trying to just force something down with a flyer, and we've always got something clean that we can pursue that moves forward the game state without playing into our opponent's strengths. And so yes, it begins with Saladin, but then the very first model after that, and frankly one of the things that you could argue we cut the Haytham for, and I have no regrets about, is an Asawira with boarding shotgun +1 burst and disco balls. There are a couple of sources of disco in Haqqislam, and frankly, there is nothing whatsoever wrong with an Odalisque, especially a linked Odalisque. You can kind of make the argument that she's sort of a little more accurate thanks to the special die, although the Asawira's native very high ballistic skill is really good. The difference between the Odalisque and the Asawira, apart from, yes, a significant amount of cost and linkability, etc., the Odalisque is a nice profile. I've been using her a bunch. I used Odalisque duos in the recent event, is that the Asawira itself is a fantastic piece to benefit from disco. It is a very good close combatant and a very good close assault piece, and so the fact that it carries its own eclipse Means that sometimes the line is just the Asawira that you've coordinated forward over the course of 2 orders in a previous turn now gets to just roll up his sleeves and blow out an entire flank. Just having access to Eclipse is something that separates this list from the Haqqislam list, for example, I ran at the recent event, and I'm very glad to have it present. We do have Zuleika and Zamira. They're necessary to justify the list name, but also they play into that coordinated order lay down smoke. They're fast, they're good assault pieces, and in this mission in particular, vehicles can't pick up objectives, but bikes can. And so the speed of those bikers was going to be very, very valuable. We then have the Zabek. Haqqislam vehicles are still excellent, and in particular what the Zabek is doing is giving me a fire platform that is firstly robust, but secondly has synergy with all of the smoke throwers. If I need to, I can use Eclipse, but I have against visor targets an Albedo ballistic skill attack -3 gun that I can do things like, for example, use the disco balls to get into good range and then take a really aggressive gunfight, and we'll see that on turn 1 in this game. We're also using a Hassassin for Day. This is not a vanity pick exactly. For Day are fine, but part of what I wanted to do with this list is, okay, let's see how much we can get out of a Hassassin for Day. And one of the things that I wanted to test was we have a lot of not just smoke, but coordinatable smoke grenade launchers. Saladin, as his lieutenant order, can do a coordinated order, and he can coordinate feasibly any of the Asawira and Zuleika and Zamira and the Zabak, all of which have medium to long range smoke that we could use to support a Hassassin for Day, literally from downtown. We've then got Layla Sharif, and she is the only hacker in the list, and she is just a splash of hacking, but there's kind of a big difference between some hacking and no hacking. She's also a specialist in cyber mask. She has 6th sense. She's a good value piece that is cheaper than any 2 other hackers that I might mash together to try to get to do her job. We've got two Matalia with jammers. They're very good. And then in Combat Group 2, having put all of these other things in the list, the Asawira, the assault pieces, the Zabek, the Fidei, boom, Magariba Guard. Now, she's doing a few things. For example, she's this list's source of baggage. I have lots of things in this list I want to reload, including those disco balls. Now, you might say 71 points is a little bit expensive for baggage, and yes, that's probably fair. She's also just a large main battle tag with a mine dispenser, and frankly, tactical awareness, independent group 2 gun, tough, durable, distraction card effects. I am not dependent on her. I don't need her to suppress enemy ARO pieces to progress the game, but if she can, that's good. I can use mine dispensers to assist with the gunfighting if I need to put down something like a Black Air. Although again, to note, this list has the luxury of not needing to put down a Black Air, and if I have spare orders in Combat Group 2, I can do the old chestnut of reload herself, fire more mines, reload herself, fire more mines. One thing that I'm going to test in future iterations of this list is dropping the mine dispenser for the grenade launcher Magariba. There's a couple of reasons for this. One of them is that I keep forgetting she has a heavy flamethrower and thinking she only has a pistol, so I may as well just play a version that has a better pistol. But the actual reason is that although I really like mine dispensers, and when you use them correctly, they can be really good, especially when you use them offensively as part of an attack. That's the real secret sauce. But one of the things that particularly a combat group like this kind of incentivizes me to do is push a button with the Hunzukut and then go back into camouflage, and then there's nothing to shoot, and the Magariba just washes 4 orders through herself, firing out mines and then reloading herself and firing out more mines, and that tends to actually be a kind of low impact play. You will usually spread them around so your opponent can't detonate more than 1 at a time, building a kind of defense in depth, and you spend all of these orders and you seed the midfield with mines, and then consistently what I find happens if you do that is nothing. Really, really regularly, I will spend those orders with different pieces that have mine dispensers, and using them in a defensive set, it doesn't accomplish anything. Mines are easy to dodge, and then even if your opponent doesn't dodge a mine, what were we just talking about the effect of damage 7 hits from a Red Fury? That's what a mine does, is a Red Fury, a single burst 1 Red Fury hit. The fundamental fact of the matter is that mines are just not especially lethal. A lot of the danger of mines comes from the fact that initially they are concealed, and your opponent has to respect that something might be a mine or might be a trooper, and that fog of war, that is a big part of the defensive value of mines. And in some factions you have a camouflage marker that could conceal not just a shock mine, but any number of scary surprises, EM mines, viral mines, for example, with OSS. Whereas a mine dispenser that has laid a shock mine, there is nothing to hide. Your opponent might even be able to shoot and put it down that way. So as much as I love mine dispensers, they're one of my favorite pieces of equipment, I should probably at least try a spec fire platform that has comfortably enough orders to work, so that'll be a future version of this list. For now, though, we will have Mine Dispenser, and we will go ha 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 wee and throw mines out everywhere. We've then got the Magariba Pilot. She's there in particular in this version of the list for the diverse specialties bonus. She's a paramedic, and so the first time I try and press a button with her in this scenario, I'll be able to get +1 special die, and then after that, look, I do have a Zabak, and therefore having access to a Gizmo kit is useful. Much of the time, she could be the cheaper 9-point specialist, and there's a few things I could use to spend 1 point on. Worthwhile enough. We've then got a Smoke Grenade Battalion. This is just for a source of smoke in Combat Group 2, but frankly with Saladin you can easily just move sources of smoke around. And given 1 extra point, I might turn it into a Jammer Battalion. We've then got a Forward Observer Hunzerkut. Now, normally I will favour the cheapest possible Hunzerkut. 15 points is 15 points, it's nice and cheap. I could use those 4 points for a lot of things. But in this list we have Layla Sharif, and we want to be able to just splash some hacking in. And sometimes it's very useful. I will pay those extra points for a deployable repeater on a camouflage model, even though there's no guided in this list, there is Trinity. And just making that kind of minimum possible investment to be able to either Carbonite or Trinity something, worthwhile. We've then got a single Dalami, Camouflage Infiltration, Panzerfaust, it's the classic, and then a Warcore because that's a 3-point regular order. I am very happy with this as a list. I was very happy with how it played in this game, and this is something that I'll be returning to and probably refining and adjusting a little bit because I had a lot of fun with this. Now, playing against me for this game is local Alistair, list naming aficionado, who has been on a big Tartary Army Corps kick recently and is just expanding his horizons a little bit into Kosmoflotilla. Kosmoflot are a faction that actually I find very interesting because they are really clearly defined relative to Ariadna by strengths and limitations. The limitations feel very obvious. The midfield is a little bit more fragile. You don't have access to Vistrals. You don't have access to Couriers. You don't have access to, like, Dynamos, for example. Or you do have access to Colonel Veronin. And all of those absences are very keenly felt, but on the other hand, the strong pieces in Kosmoflot are really very strong. And 3 particular lines of strength I think really stand out if you can fit at least 2 of them in a list. The first, and not present in this list, is just the alpha strike pieces that you can put in that are either advanced infiltration in the form of Usha McNeil or of course equip Mirage 5. Yes, EM5 exists in vanilla Ariadna and in French Merovingia. I don't apologize for mispronouncing that. But any faction that can take advantage of them has a strength in the back pocket, and even though they are not present in this list, we will see that have a little bit of an impact on me because I have to deploy not knowing whether there's something I need to defend against, and so we're going first in this game. Now, the strengths that I really like in Kosmoflot that are present in this list are firstly the Cosmosoldat, which is just, holy hell, what a glow up. Just a grab bag of skills on those guys that makes every single one of those profiles. They are limited by 4/4 move. That's basically it. Everything else about them is a really nice combination of skills that is very aggressively costed with very good defensive stats. I think possibly today one of my favorite Cosmosoldat profiles is actually just the paramedic. Because 36 points for a Burst 4 T2 rifle with ballistic skill attack -3, MSV1, Warhorse on an Armor 6 no wounding cap profile is oh, that's just really good. And then you can do it with the APHMG or the portable autocannon, or you can attach other things to them to get link bonuses that way. Cosmosoldat are just very good. You are kind of forced, I think, into at least considering an ARO Cosmosoldat, which means the portable autocannon, because you don't have Vistrals in this faction, and you have to have something that you can present to your opponent to kind of pin them back or occupy their attention or force their hand a little bit on the first turn. But being forced to take the Cosmosoldat portable autocannon is by no means the worst fate. The other strength that we really have visible in Kosmoflot these days is also present in this list, and that's the Volkalak. And a glow-up is not exactly how I would describe them. They've been on this weird journey where they used to be just one of the most annoying ARO pieces in the game, and then all of the support to make that work kind of fell away, and so no one used them for a while, and then in the October update, they got turned into what they should probably have always been, which is violently effective close assault troops. They have the Wolver thing of low ballistic skill, which is why I'm not personally super heavy on the HMG, for example. but they're very mobile and very dangerous and very tough, and they have this interesting grab bag of equipment, and frankly, I could happily run 2 of the paramedic Volcalax and just storm forward with that. And as much as that means Kosmoflot is a faction where the attention really is all on the top end of town, these aren't aggressively expensive things. We're talking about 44 at the most expensive and 33 sort of toward the cheaper end, and those are affordable, and there's still enough Ariadnan stuff in this list to fit all of that, and oh look, there's a Chernobyl still. So I am not sure that Kosmoflot are necessarily a faction for me exactly, but I like where they're at. I like where they're at a lot these days. I think they've got an identity, and that's something that was kind of lapsed a little bit, particularly in early N5. So what is the list top to bottom? We've got a Dozer and a Kibervolk, love me a Kibervolk, a Rockot and then a Rockot Lieutenant Decoy, the Cosmosoldat, portable autocannon, and he'll be duoed with 2 Stranics, 1 Doctor and 1 Specialist Operative. Modestly cheap. These are a cheaper way just about of getting link bonuses for the Cosmosoldat without just paying for a second Cosmosoldat. And then the 2 Volcalax that we mentioned, the 1 Paramedic and the 1 HMG. And yep, fair enough, you've got the points, you have the SWC for the HMG in this list. They are wild cards, they don't form a link by themselves, so they are, in this instance, harassing with, or possibly core fire teaming, with the Varangian Guard. Then in Combat Group 2, we've got a duo of a Varangian Guard and Den McConnelly, the Chernobog, the cheap profile, 36 points for a main battle tag, a Tractor Mule, a generic Tractor Mule, and then an Ermandino with an electronic. Nice, clean list, and in this particular scenario, we've got diverse specialties at play, and so we've got a doctor and multiple engineers. So a nice clean way to get at least 2 presses of the button with that special die bonus that you get from this scenario. Again, as a reminder, how does this scenario play? Go and check the entire video I did about that came out just before this one. So Ghost in the Feed is a radial deployment scenario with 3 consoles across the center. I win the lieutenant role in this case, and I'm very comfortable going first here. There are some limited advantages to second player in this scenario, mostly that because when you press a console to find a clue, one of the clue tokens that you'll pick, so each player places out 3 clue tokens at the beginning of the game. Those clue tokens have to be spread apart and a distance from the deployment zone. But the important thing about those tokens is that they are entirely player agnostic. Whenever you activate a console, you get to reveal a clue that you can then steal or control. But the thing about that is that when you activate a console, your opponent chooses for you which clue you have revealed, where you have found one. And so both players are trying to put these clues in like miserable to find location, or at least with like a set of options around where these clues might go. And there's a small subtle advantage therefore with second player in that first player will kind of have to press some of the buttons first, and so second player gets to nominate some of the really most miserable clues to go after possible, but then the clues locations where they might be are public, and you can deploy to accommodate that. And so I think just the advantage, the usual first player advantage of Infinity, is moderated slightly by the scenario, but which fundamentally I'm very comfortable in this case going first. I don't judge either of the deployment zones to be catastrophically hostile, and so happy to pick first turn, and Alistair elects to deploy second in this deployment zone over here. So I'm in the bottom right corner, Alistair is in the top left. I'll be deploying my entire army and reserving the Zabek and the Hassassin for day, and Alistair will be reserving, unsurprisingly, his autocannon. Now, in terms of deployment, this is the part of the game where I actually have to stop and put a great deal of thought into the possibility of Equipa Mirage existing. One of the things that's very tempting when you're going first is to like posture for scenario or an alpha strike or pushing into the midfield, and that is very often good practice. But if I do that and I leave my backfield just undefended, well, if my opponent has a parachutist deployment zone, because, for example, I am playing against Kosmoflot and they have some of the best parachutist DZs in the entire game, well, I will look very silly, won't I? And so a good 5 minutes, as much as this is a very aggressively postured defensive setup, a good 5 minutes of my deployment are just, let's make sure that Saladin doesn't die to a dog warrior and a Frenchwoman in my first reactive turn. And so that's why Saladin is deployed down here, and there is a Ghazi Matawi here that will not move forward until I have confirmation that Equipa Mirage don't exist in this game. This Ghazi has a very nice jammer radius that will cover everything down to even a model parachutist deployment zoning in on here. Saladin himself has his flash pulse, and then there is also a Warcore here, watching both of these table edges, and then there's lots of guns pointing in this direction, which means I am relatively comfortable that I am secure against equip mirage. They don't exist in this game, but I have to spend time thinking about it and posturing troops to protect that, because if they did exist and I didn't defend against it, I could just lose in my first reactive turn. Now, everything else is set up to be able to play things relatively aggressively. We have Layla Sharif and the Asarira down behind this crate. We have Zamira down here as well. The only advantage Zamira has over Zuleika is that she's a little bit better at long-range smoke, higher ballistic skill, and so I've got her set up to be able to impetuous safely around here and then possibly lay down smoke with the smoke grenade launcher into this space. Zamira, by comparison, is down here, ready to move out in this direction. The Magariba Guard, I don't bother reserving, as much as it's tempting to reserve a tag, because there's only so many places that I can put it, and I can move it on my first turn comfortably enough. The Asawira, yeah, I mentioned, is down here. The Zabek will reserve deploy here, but having the flexibility about where it goes is really important because I need it to respond to, in particular, where do I think that my opponent's MSV arrows, if they have one, and I do expect one, are going to go. And then ready to impetuous into this building are these two Ghazi, the two Ghazi Metalia, one with a chain rifle, one with a jammer. I'm pretty particular about checking lines of sight before I put them there, but I do confirm that there really aren't any probable ARO positions in my opponent's DZ that might see them. They would see them if they continue moving up and around and out of this building, but I don't intend to do that. I'm just looking to make good use of the free impetuous activation. Otherwise, we've got a Hunzakut deployed right next to this button. Infiltration's really good in radials. And then a Dalami deployed prone down here. The Dalami is deployed prone down here because you can probably see there are clues scattered across the table, possible clue locations. This is a HVT, but otherwise, in terms of locations of possible clues, I've got them all circled there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They're not, number is not important, it's just to showcase that there are 6 of them. And so this Dalami over here is in a position where it can feasibly make a dive on either of these two, number 5 and number 6, just in case my opponent, I want to disincentivize my opponent from picking one of those. I'd like to play probably in this space of the table, and so I just set up in case I need to grab either of those. Reserve drop, otherwise is noted, is the Hassassin for Day, which will deploy. We'll talk about that when we get to the Kosmoflot deployment. And speaking of Kosmoflot deployment, deployed making good use of all of this cover here, wedged in against like this car accident and these shipping crates. We kind of set this table up imagining that this like military transport had landed in and disgorged all of its troops, and in the process had like driven a truck off the road and caused this 2-car pileup. I was quite happy with how we set the table up. And so Alistair is making lots of use of this high cover around here. We've got Varangians scattered about. Den McConnelly and a Varangian are deployed down here and here. Denmar's metachemistry roll will be a banger, 8-4 move with climbing plus. And then the two Rokot are deployed, one behind these crates and one behind this crate over here. And there's something that Alistair does here that is very clever in terms of, it's very obvious that one of these two is the lieutenant, and which one he picks. And in the same way that nature abhors a vacuum, a Hassassin for Day loves a nook. Impersonators love being able to get a kill and then be in total cover. And so what Alistair has done is he's got this very inviting Rokot over here, which a Fidei could jump onto and kill and be prone behind this cover, and then this one in a slightly more open and vulnerable position. A Hassassin Fidei that goes after and kills that is going to be exposed to a lot of elements collapsing in on it, even though it's in a more exposed position. The Rokot itself is in a more exposed position. And so, yeah, I do actually go after this Rokot over here with a Hassassin Fidei on the grounds that, look, if it's not the Lieutenant, it's still a clean kill and the Fidei can re-impersonate. And Alistair is like, yes, that's fine, please take the decoy. So well played on his part, taking advantage of the fact that I wouldn't roll the dice on a 50-50 without also looking for some secondary edge to take advantage of. The Chernobog is deployed here. We've got Stranox and Irmandinos and Varangians all in and about this space. The Kibervolk itself is deployed down here. There's another Varangian just watching this approach, and the Dozer hanging out behind it. So that's everything bar, we've obviously covered the Hassassin Fidei. Another advantage of the Fidei's deployment position is that it's behind the Chernobog, so I could also just run into and stab the Chernobog if I particularly wanted to. Anyway, down comes, finally, Alistair does sort of like, I'd really like to get eyes on that piece, but no, he can't, that's fine. More important is that the portable autocannon MSV1 Warhorse goes down in a position where it's got lots of control over this line here, and then lots of control down here. So, yep, okay, cool, good ARO piece, which I am going to have to deal with in my first turn. But we have tools to deal with that. I've got counterintelligence and lots of orders, so Alistair elects to keep his command tokens. I personally am of the opinion, just strip orders. Do it out of spite if nothing else, and we crack on with the first turn. I've positioned to get lots of impetuous activations, and so we do that. The Matawis will come in here, the bikes will all be moving up and around, and we'll throw out a bunch of smoke, etc., some of which even lands, some of which doesn't. Now, the first thing we have to figure out is, well, actually, let's just go and kill that Rockot. Hassassin for day, she's got a clean line, she jumps over, she stabs the Rockot to death, she's prone when she does so, and then I just put an order aside. I can, if I want to, I could do other things with her that turn, but I suspect that combat group is going to have a lot in it, so I'll just put one order aside and I'll re-impersonate her at the end of the round. If I'd had a lot more orders spare, the option did exist to re-impersonate, sneak back around the Chernoborg. The Chernoborg has used alert to change its facing and look at her. I could have gotten into melee with the Chernoborg and potentially tied it down or stabbed it a little bit. She will struggle a bit to put down a tag, and there are too many other things that could just run back and stab her to death if she's already in close combat. So I'm like, you know what? I will spend 2 orders, one to make it move in and make the kill, one to re-impersonate, and at that cost, my opponent has lost all of the orders that Rocket will generate the entire game, and maybe he's lost a lieutenant? Spoiler alert, no he's not. Now, from there, we have to turn our attention to the Kosmoflot. Strictly speaking, I don't ever have to fight this thing, but if I elect to not ever fight this thing, well then I'm going to be throwing out Disco the entire game, and so it is worth putting some effort in to see if we can deal with that. Now, what I want to do is give myself the best chance possible, and so what we are going to do is we're going to have the Asawira lay down some Disco here. That serves a very particular purpose. That lets the Zabek get in underneath good range, gets inside 16 inches, because it will emerge from the smoke here, and it won't have been seen before that approach. And so I use a little bit of Disco just to make sure that the first gunfight against the autocannon happens in a range band that is 0 for the autocannon. That gives me the best possible chance of success. This is a pretty good gunfight. There are better gunfights the Zabek can have. Its ballistical attack -3 doesn't apply against a Warhorse Trooper, and so this is going to take a little bit of time, but four face-to-face rolls later, we wound and then put the Kosmoflot all the way to dead. That's a lot of orders on my turn. It's going to prevent me from really aggressively taking further attacks. We'll get one more kill this round, where one spare order with the Zabak will be able to scoot up and take some plunging fire into the Volker-like HMG and put it down. The HMG is watching a line where it can see this Hunzerkut, and then we'll just go for gold on scenario. So the Hunzerkut is going to activate, it's going to scooch around here, it's going to get the +1 special die, and so succeed on activating this objective. And Alistair selects this clue for me to go after. Well, that's pretty doable now that the Kosmoflot is down, and so Zamira is going to zoom past and zoom around to here. That does have the disadvantage of forcing her to be close to my opponent's deployment zone. There's really nowhere else she could retreat to with the orders that I have, so he will get a kill on her next turn, but worth it for going after the clue. Otherwise, all that will happen this turn, and this has been a very good turn so far, is that I will fall a little bit into the trap of Magariba Guard Mine Dispenser. We will throw out a bunch of mines. And frankly, I suspect that if I was playing the same game with a different Magariba profile, and I just rolled back the same attack and I put all of those orders that she spent, I think she spent 4 or 5 orders, and I just washed those through Spec Fire, might accomplish more, which is something to test in future. Still, this is a good first turn. We have a button pressed, revealed a clue, and grabbed a clue, which means we're on track to try and accomplish what is probably the hardest objective in this scenario, which is to have grabbed a clue every single round, and we've killed 3 of our opponent's troopers, including 2 of his biggest guns. So we can see the absolute minefield that I've laid with the Magariba. We've got a mine there, a mine here, a mine here, a mine here, and cool, that's really good. What will the implication of that be? Oh, there's a mine here, must have missed one of them. Nothing. None of these mines will do anything. Literally 0 casualties from mines. This is why this kind of play with Mine Dispenser is a little, it's the equivalent of spending 5 orders on 1 dice worth of Red Fury. Still, with the big gun suppressed, Alistair is in a pretty tricky situation. How does he recover from here? And so what he's going to try and do is get Potentially some scenario lines pursued, but try and recover the attritional advantage if he can to carry him on into future turns. This is a risk in this scenario. You do want to really try and focus on the scenario, like do the thing you have to do each round and then spend spare orders. But in his judgment, he's lost two important pieces on his first turn and does not have a lot of a choice. So the first thing that's going to happen is that the Denma and Varangian duo is going to push in and around here. Denma himself will be left in a mostly safe position, but the Varangian will clear out a bunch of mines just by dodging or tanking them, and spend a couple of orders engaging Zuleika before putting her down. It will be left in a somewhat awkward position that I can kill next turn, but a kill on her is a kill on her. From there, two lines of advance/attack. The first is that the Inner Sphere Catapult, Chernobog, is going to move out and engage the Zabek. The Zabek is in a little bit of an awkward position here. I didn't really have, there was nowhere that I could put it that was truly safe. Even pulling back and around here into this position would still have left it in the same engagement space that it was going to suffer, which is that the catapult is going to push up in this direction and then gunfight into it. At least in this closer position here, I might be able to keep range bands kind of awkward, but it does it no good. And look, that's fine. This is a piece that is paying for armor and wounds as its survivability mechanic, not mimetism and that kind of penalty. And so the Chernobog does indeed move, spool up, fire its gun, and puts, after a couple of face-to-face rolls, 2 wounds on the Hatham, Zabek. And that's why I like the Zabek kind of more than I like the Hatham as a standalone flyer, because it's got 3 wounds. Down goes the escape system, down goes the Eclipse, the pilot bails out, and the pilot will do things for the remainder of the game. 2 thumbs up. Now, from Alistair's perspective, he's at least killed the damn vehicle part of the thing that was killing all of his troops, but I still have a whole-ass regular model and actually not a bad gunfighter either. Now, the next line of advance, and Alistair is doing a pretty good job keeping his orders efficient here, is it is time for the Volkalike Paramedic to show his quality. And so with the Zabek down, very, very fast movement, right? These are 8-inch jumps and then 4-inch dodge. This thing absolutely motors, swings past, uses the diverse specialties to trigger the paramedic bonus, and activates this console. And I go, yeah, okay, sure, you can pick up this clue over here, please. And this is a little bit of a question, because there is a very strong argument for me to select this clue over here instead. If I'd done that, the Volkalike would probably have wandered around to go after it. And we basically had this conversation where Alistair is like, if you don't pick that clue, I am just going to put the Volkalike into your Magariba Guard. And I'm like, go ahead, put the Volkalike into the Magariba Guard. Scenario points are how you win the game. And so I reveal a clue that is too far away for Alistair to get this turn. He doesn't have enough orders left on the Chernobog. And so for my temerity, the Volkalike comes around here, dodges yet another mine, and then into the Magariba. Now, one thing that happens is that he throws some drop bears out. The Magariba pilot actually just bails me the hell out of this. I do not reveal Layla Sharif, who cybermasked last turn. She needs to live. I have a classified that only she can do. But I actually managed to survive with the paramedic, the drop bear fork, and he doesn't have enough orders to get smoke down here. And so as dangerous as the Volkalike is, it's actually caught between these two pieces. The Magariba is firing at it. It's got immunity armor, but she's still putting rounds into it. And there's just this little shotgun from the Magariba pilot that is just firing into the Volkalike on the 2 orders that it closes. And so the Volkalike gets into the Magariba, burst 2 in close combat, APDA is ready to stab this cag to death. It can't die to the flamethrower because it's got immunity armor, and just shotgun hit, and he fails both of his saves. I think the Volkalike deserved better and could very well have put that Magariba Guard down, but in this particular case, I get dinged up a little bit, but it survives. Not to worry, there will be something else along in future that will put it in the dirt, but for now, Magariba Pilot. Thumbs up, good job. Alistair has, at the end of this round, gotten a button pressed, but very much behind at this point. Now, for my part, beginning of turn 2, there's a sort of obvious line, which is have the Magariba and Chernobog fight. This is pretty safe as far as tag versus tag engagements go, because the Chernobog is firing back AP, not explosive rounds, and so I can afford to take that risk a couple of times, but I am just concerned that will turn into a slap fight, and actually high scoring in this scenario is difficult. And I want to see if it's possible to actually pull out the major win. One of the things I found during testing was that it was possible to get the full 10-point score in the scenario. I want to see if I can do it. I'm going to be very laser focused on scenario as a result. And so what we're going to be doing is laying down a whole bunch of smoke, etc., and then making use of the Zabek pilot. A bunch of smoke will go down to get me around and past the Chernobog, and she'll actually come up here. She'll try and fail multiple times to press the button. I will eventually get it pressed. And Alistair will select this clue down here, which basically makes good benefit of the fact that I didn't just spool up with the Magariba, because I'm going to need orders now to pick that up. I've left the order spare, and so it's going to be the Magariba pilot that actually walks around here and walks around here, but not before we do a little bit of work with the Haytham pilot, Zabak pilot, sorry, and she uses her Spitfire with Ballistical Attack -3 to put down, firstly, this Ermandino, and then secondly, this Ferengian. She's still a very good gunfighter. Ballistic skill 13, albedo doesn't matter here, but albedo and beer stack -3. She's a beer stack -3 Spitfire. Loses the AP, but still very solid. Now, much of the first combat group's orders have been spent firstly watching through the pilot in order to get those things done, fail multiple mission objective button presses, and secondly lay down smoke. But we are able to use coordinated orders, etc., just to accomplish a little bit more, with the particularly important thing being that the Asawira is able to get forward to here. And what we're trying to do basically is just sort of put a cordon around this space. I know that there is a clue here that has been revealed for Alistair, and so I want to make it just as painful as possible for him to get that, while also locking down other lines of approach. The only other things that will accomplish this turn is actually the pilot. When she's gone on that walk, she's going to move this direction and then back in this direction to get this button pressed, which will also reveal this HVT, this clue back here. So we do have all three buttons right now, and we're basically just set up to know what our last turn will look like. We've got 2 clues revealed. We haven't done much damage this turn. We have killed 2 models, and that's fine. But so long as I can control this space here, I can make it difficult for Alistair to definitely catch up on points. The only cost is that I haven't inflicted terribly much attrition, and so he still has a fully operational Chernobog, and in this particular case also a fully operational Den McConnelly. Now, the Chernobog will have not a rough time of it exactly, but not have things go all its own way. It will be the one that spends all of the orders. I think actually he condenses his combat groups together at this point, but it will spend a bunch of orders. It will have some face-to-face rolls down this position. Mostly I actually just spent spanging off of the Asawira, trying to get it to accomplish anything and clearing out all of these mines so that it can, while it's engaging this position over here, then take 1 spare short skill, place deployable, pop out its little robot, its Smelodikin, and have the little robot run down in this direction to pick up this clue. Couldn't stop me from doing that, that's fair enough. But otherwise, actually, the Asawira survives well, and by survives well, I mean it takes 2 wounds, but 2 wounds is an important number. I do tell Alistair, this model has regeneration, just before you do anything else. This model has regen. I always fail it, but the one time you don't put bullets into it, I will succeed. And he's like, I know, I don't have any orders left, and at the end of the round, the Asawira is going to regenerate for like the first successful time in N5. He doesn't have any orders because what he does do otherwise is rip a hole through this flank of the board. He's not able to get Zuleika. He actually just smokes past her rather than dealing with her like various different guns. But he does, using 8-4 move Den McConnelly, put down the Magariba pilot, get smoke down here. I try and stop him, and then having not been able to stop him, I just get Zuleika away and whoomp into the Magariba guard. And this time, after multiple orders, hacking away at her, he gets in underneath the ARO. She's got 360 visor, but he gets into close combat, and he beats the absolute shit out of the Magariba guard with Den McConnelly. So Cray Scotsman rips her to pieces, doesn't kill her, but does put her unconscious, and that's enough given I'm about to begin my 3rd turn. So going into my round 3, at the end of the previous turn, the first thing that happens is that this Asawira will regenerate, glory be, and then we figure out what we're going to do. Now, first thing, relatively straightforward. I mean, yes, Den McConnelly is right up the butt of this Magariba, threatening to put it all the way to dead if I give him the opportunity. But the only thing that we really have to do is pick up the clue that is back here. We do that, and we've gotten all 3 clues that we can pick up. We've got a ton of buttons pressed. That's the game comfortably in the bag. We will do that. We will also see what else we can do. So Zuleika is going to attempt to put down Den McConnelly, and after a little bit of back and forth, I believe she does so, gets down smoke, rides off into the distance down here, and picks up this clue. Cool. That kind of locks the game up, but what else can we accomplish? Well, there's a downed Ermandino over here that Layla Sharif will crawl across this bridge and then data scan. She'll stand back up after that, just to be an ARO piece that is annoying. And that leaves us with, well, actually, sorry, she'll crawl prone across the bridge because she's got things to do while she's doing that. That gives us the opportunity to actually flex one of the capabilities that we put into this list. This one's got over here is going to put down a deployable repeater. And so as Layla is crawling across the bridge, it takes her 2 goes, but she will carbonite this tag. That will let me lay down some smoke and disco and get the Asawira into close combat. And also, given that it's immobilized, once I get the Asawira into close combat, this dog attempts to deal with me, and rather than stab the tag, I just boarding shotgun the Kibavolk all the way to dead because the Asawira has a burst through ballistic skill 4 boarding shotgun. And that lets me spend, I got 1 order left after all of those things in Combat Group 2, and so this Delamy stands up and just fires his Panzerfaust full-on Black Hawk Down style into the Chernobog. Don't kill it, do a wound, and actually the Chernobog will shrug off all remaining attempts to deal damage to it over the course of this round, but I have immobilized it and left an Asawira in base contact. I will admit I was also trying to accomplish the classified capture, which you can do on an immobilized enemy by having a veteran troop in base contact with it, and I may have forgotten that the Asawira is in fact a dumbass. He is an elite. He's not an elite and he's not a veteran. He's a headquarters troop. The worst kind of troop. But I do nevertheless thoroughly neutralize the Chernobog, and in fact as we roll into the final round, not a lot can be accomplished. We do have a picture here for the sake of posterity, but the best possible chance that Alistair has to try and catch up a little bit on score is, given that I've got all 3 objectives at this stage, and I've picked up 3 clues, and I've done 1 classified, and I'm securing the HVT. Alistair's only line, if this were a tournament or a narrative event in which OPs matter, is he's going to attempt to get 1 button pressed and pick up 1 clue. The only clue that remains to be that can be picked up that is meaningful is this one here. I think there's also 1 back here, and so he's kind of in a tricky spot. One issue with the scenario is that if you don't keep it approximately even, it doesn't rubber band particularly well. Because Alistair has not pressed enough buttons, I have my pick of what he's trying to do. So really he has to make a run on each of 2 different buttons, press both of them, and then grab this clue. He has a red hot crack, but there's too many arrows, there's too much stuff in the way. At this stage, the big guns never tire, and so that wraps up this game with 10 points to Haqqislam and 2, I believe, to Kosmoflot. He did have a bunch of classifieds that he could do, but then the paramedics all went on mad rampaging runs up the field and died. Now, obviously, this was Alistair's first time seeing the scenario, whereas I have been playtesting this to try and make sure that it works as a scenario. On top of that, I had that dog in me after getting my shit flogged sideways by Kyle's Panagiania, and so Alistair really literally got both barrels this game and was an absolute gem and a sport about it. Very capable player, but the odds were against him in this one. Still, he told me he had a good time, and I had a fantastic time. I really enjoyed this Haqqislam list, and I will be revisiting it. And that gets our first actual win, not just a draw, but a win on the board for the Monday Signal in Week 2. Depending on viewer interest, we may follow the campaign through to its conclusion. Not for sure what faction I'll play next. I might revisit Haqqislam, but I do try and mix up battle reports. Who knows, maybe it's time for a combined army bat rep. Don't know how we narratively spin that. Happy to hear what your thoughts are on that, or what the natural progression narratively for the next list to play might be. And do please go and check out the mission briefing and let me know your thoughts on the mission. It's pretty standard. It's not doing anything that's really enormously innovative. It's really just an ITS scenario that stretches player mobility a little bit and fits the narrative kind of broadly. Primarily just with the goal in this case of writing a scenario that I personally would like to play. So definitely think I could have improved the narrative elements of the scenario a little bit more, but on the other hand, I'm very happy with diverse specialties as a rule. And I actually think the your opponent chooses which objective you can now pursue has some really interesting options and produced some interesting games in testing. So I hope you guys have the same experience. If you do, please tell me about it. If you don't, please tell me about it. One of the things that has been bandied around is, hey, maybe we could repurpose these missions for future use. And so that does mean I'm very interested to know, once you've played the scenario, what about it might you change? Otherwise, if you'd like to support the channel, just as a reminder, you can do so via the Buy Me a Coffee link on the video description below, or by becoming a channel member on YouTube. We cover Infinity and other wargames, generally aim for about a video once a week, although of course we've had a slew of videos recently covering the Monday Signal campaign. And so in this case, that means that we will approximately be back maybe about this time next week with more Infinity content. As always, hope very much that you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.